I invite us, Claudia, that was such a powerful evocation of what I'm aiming to do in the next few minutes. I just ask everybody to notice how you feel in this moment. Notice the feeling that we have when we're in contact with that deepest, truest part of ourselves. And I invite you to do your best to keep your focus on that and don't pay any attention to what I'm saying. The reason I say that is because I want to try something different from the way that we normally do service. Before I do that, I just want to also share with you that it's a secret that most of you probably don't know, that when people get up to give these talks, we generally try to teach what we're trying to learn. So what I'm working on learning from myself right now is to appreciate my humanity. I'm willing to be the only one in this room that struggles with his humanity or her humanity. And by that I mean the dealing with the sense of anxiety and fear and belief in limitation and lack of faith that often accompanies my daily life, particularly when I'm confronted with challenges that are new or different. That crazy voice in my head that's telling me it's not going to work out, there's something wrong, or I don't know about you, but I often have this sense of impending doom. There's another shoe about to fall. I'm 67 years old and I'm still having this experience. So what I'm struggling with is to know that that's okay, that that's part of the deal, that there's a gift in my humanity, in our humanity. So the title of my talk is The Sign of the Cross, because it occurred to me as I was meditating on humanity, on my humanity, on the struggles, and as Sally shared with us when you talked about the let the universe lead us, guide us experience that you had at the thrift store, there's also this powerful creative synergy that we all also participate in that are reflected in our teaching through about the 12 powers. That while my humanity also offers me pain and frustration and fear and doubt, it also offers me creativity and joy and love and connection and a sense of oneness with God. So what I notice about the way that we've been doing church for about 2,000 years is that it's kind of like a classroom. So I'm the teacher, you're the students, or Cherie's the teacher, or Phil's the teacher, or whoever it is, the rabbi, the imam, the priest, the minister. And there's an assumption in there that we just assume, we just take for granted, which is that this person is the expert. And I'm here to learn something that I don't know that the expert knows. And I don't agree with that. I'm no more expert on what I'm going to talk about than you are. So what I want to see if we can do is create a little bit of a we experience rather than an I-you experience, an audience participation. So the way that I'm going to do this, if you're willing to play along with me, is I'm going to share some thoughts and insights, and then I'm going to ask us to stop and take it inside, just like we did, just like Claudia led us. Because what I'm aiming for here is not a thought about our humanity, but an experience of it. And it occurred to me in thinking about this talk that the cross is the perfect symbol of our humanity. The cross is the perfect experience of our humanity, that we are the cross. And so I want to set that up. I want to just share some thoughts that I had about how to get to that as an experience. But first of all, anybody have any problem with this approach? And who's going to say I do, right? So I'm grateful that you're willing to try something a little bit different. I don't think this will put anybody outside of a comfort zone. If it does, then that's good information to notice for ourselves. So I want to start with the observation that particularly in our world today, that things go so fast, they come at us so fast, and our senses take in information in such a way that we don't have the time to savor and appreciate how they came to us. So we're at least at the surface of our attention, we're just not really paying attention to much that's going on. We take it in, it goes out. We have an automatic response to so much of what we see and experience in our lives. And that includes how we experience and appreciate our faith and the symbols of our faith. So it's an interesting fact that everything that we see in front of us, everything that we're experiencing right now, actually has been coming to us over 13 billion years. Those of you who've studied the cosmology or the history of the universe know that it was roughly 100,000 years after the Big Bang that atoms were created. Before that, there were no atoms, but then 100,000 years ago, the universe had expanded sufficiently that for it cooled down sufficiently that atoms came out of the original plasma. And here's the kind of thing, just to show us how we don't really appreciate that we are living history. Every atom in our bodies was created in that 100,000 year after the Big Bang period. The atoms in your body, Dan, are not 50, 60 years old, however old you are. They're 13 billion years old, so it's hard for us to appreciate that we're actually 13 billion years old. That all of the material composition of our bodies has been around for 13 billion years. So, in the same way that we don't have a way to appreciate our physical heritage, that we just kind of get up in the morning and we have an experience and we do what we do. If you're like me, you just have a habit, a ritual of what you do when you wake up. And we go through our day and then we end our day in a more or less the same kind of habitual, ritualistic kind of way. We go to sleep and then start all over again. And we don't really appreciate how it is that we got here and who we really are. And so I want to just point out this is true about Christianity. This is true of everything. But I want to now focus down in our Christian heritage. Most of us in this room, not all of us, but most of us were raised in the Christian milieu, Christian culture, or if we want to expand it a little bit, Judeo-Christian culture, in such a way that we don't often reflect on what's unique about Christianity. There's 5, 6, 7 major world religions that billions of people practice. Christianity is one of them. And what distinguishes Christianity from all the others is something worth taking a look at. And that is that Christianity is the only faith that asserts that God and man are the same thing. Christianity is the only religion that asserts that divine substance and human substance are one and the same. Judaism and Islam are tribal religions. God stands above the members of those tribes, the people that practice those religion, and God gives commands. And salvation for a Jew or a Muslim comes from following the commands of God. But they're not God. They're not the same. And the Eastern religions, of course, assert that everything that we see in our humanity and our daily experience, including that 13 billion years of material atomic existence, actually don't exist. Those are illusions. And that if you practice the precepts of those faiths, you'll be able to pierce the veil of those illusions and experience the actual reality, as the Buddhists say, nirvana, behind this illusion. And that the aim of life is to let go of life and pierce the veil. So only Christianity, and to be fair, that part of Hinduism called Advaita Vedanta, boldly claim that the divine and human are not separate categories of existence, but they're in fact the same thing, the same as we say in unity, the same substance. And this is not just an abstract ideal. In the Christian story, God literally becomes a man. God takes on humanity. God is born through the birthing process that we all go through. He developed as Jesus the Christ, and he died. He went through the entire human experience that each one of us also goes through. So the New Testament gives us this astonishing story that God not only descends fully into humanity, but he teaches all of us that by his action of doing that, we are all given the ticket to ascend fully into the exact same divinity that God descended from to take on humanity. I was reading a book of my favorite American Christian mystic, Thomas Merton, and this is what he has to say. In becoming man, God became not only Jesus Christ, but also potentially every man and woman that ever existed. God became not only this man, but also in a broader and more mystical sense, yet no less truly, every man. So let's stop here and do a little contemplation. In becoming human, God became not only Jesus Christ, but me as well. In becoming human, God became not only Jesus Christ, but me as well. You willing to say that with me? In becoming human, God became not only Jesus Christ, but me as well. So I invite us to take that into our hearts for a couple of moments. God became me as God became Jesus. What's the feeling that we have when we take that into our hearts? What shows up for us? God became not only Jesus the Christ, but me as well. So whatever feeling there is, please just keep your heart open to that. The cross is a perfect symbol of this fact of the unity of God and man. The simple geometric shape captures the essence of Christianity and the essence of humanity. So with this appreciation of the uniqueness of the Christian message, let's now take a new look at the cross and see how this can support our understanding of this. Now, for most of the time of Christianity, Christians considered the cross the instrument of Jesus' crucifixion. This was a great invitation for all of us to dwell on the torture that Jesus experienced in this most painful method of execution. We are asked to focus on this so that we appropriately appreciate the gift of salvation that the sacrifice of his life brings us. In 1 Peter we read, for example, "For Christ died for sins once and for all, a good man on behalf of sinners, in order to lead you to God. He was put to death physically, but made alive spiritually." In 4 Romans we read, "He was delivered over to death for our sins and was raised to life for our justification." So that's one thing that the look at the cross as a symbol of Christianity raises for us, and it's something that was taught us. It's been taught for millennia since the beginning of our religion. The cross is where Jesus was killed. But we're metaphysicians, so we look at this in a different way. So let's just note simply that the cross comprises 2 basic elements. There's a horizontal bar and a vertical bar that meet in the center. And in truth, if you think about it, we actually see crosses everywhere. There's places where the tiles cross, there's street crossings, there's crosses on the utility poles. Everywhere there's crosses. There's crosses so ubiquitous in our lives, another thing we don't notice anymore. And so in the same kind of way we don't notice the geometry of crossing in physical reality, we tend to forget the cross in our mystical reality. The Metaphysical Bible Dictionary says the cross is the crystallization of 2 currents of thought, the state of consciousness termed sense-mind. The perpendicular bar symbolizes the inner current of divine life, the horizontal bar the cross current of human limitation. The latter symbolizes the mind of the flesh also, and it burdens the body with its various erroneous beliefs. The center of this action is the center of action of this sense mind is in the brain, and there it has to be met in the final overcoming that the I am undertakes. So let's contemplate this by first starting with the horizontal bar. This dimension, the horizontal bar, represents dimensional reality, limitation, beginning and end, time and space. or as the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary says, the cross-current of human limitation. In fact, indeed, this bar stands for all of creation from the Big Bang till today. We think of it in a linear kind of way. We can also see that in our own individual lives. We were born and we made it to here today. So let's focus on the human aspect of this, thinking of our own history, thinking of what it was like growing up as a child in our homes, thinking about going to school for the first time, going to high school, first teenage crushes and fears, acne, first car. Those of us who got married, what was our wedding day like? Those of us who've had children, what did it feel like to have those children? Those of us who have grandchildren, what does it feel like to have grandchildren? This is our human experience. This is where we live on this horizontal bar. The horizontal bar is also the territory of our belief in lack and limitation, of the inner voice that criticizes and fears. So let's take a moment now to contemplate, to go inside. Let's contemplate the horizontal bar of our lives. Take a moment and just concentrate on your own history, your own experience. It doesn't matter what shows up. Everyone's going to have something different arise about our history. But let's just take a moment and go into our experience of earth as opposed to heaven in our daily lives. Whatever we're thinking of, whatever's showing up in our consciousness, this is our embodied experience. This is where thoughts come from. Remember, thoughts are things. Things belong on the horizontal bar. They belong on the finite bar. They belong on the bar that we could say represents Earth. Now let's contemplate and move our thoughts to the vertical bar of the cross, the realm of transcendence. Liberation from the linear realm of dimensionality of time and space. The vertical bar represents the divine, the all that is, the world of no time and no space, the fact of no beginning, no end. And of course, we can have a thought about that, but that's a horizontal bar activity. So to appreciate the vertical bar, we seek to have an experience. Now, for me, the way to find this experience is to think about something I really love to do. Think about something that you really love to do. Perhaps you enjoy quilting. Perhaps you enjoy running. Perhaps you love to cook or travel. Perhaps you're great at gardening, crossword puzzles. Whatever brings you maximum joy tends also to take us out of time and space. We find this in the experience of love. Love for our spouse, our children, our grandchildren, lifelong friends. Whenever we do these activities with people that we love, you ever find yourself saying, I lost track of time? Losing track of time is losing the horizontal bar experience and moving into the vertical bar experience. This represents the experience of unconditionality. And unconditionality is the essential quality of love. The vertical bar also represents the spectrum of consciousness, beginning with the lowest, simplest structure of consciousness, the consciousness of a subatomic particle, a quark, and moving all the way up to the consciousness of the divine. It reminds us that we have access to divine mind. As Emmett Fox says, the only real problem we have is to raise in consciousness. And so the treatment for finding ourselves stuck in our horizontal experience is to remove our awareness from the problem and turn to God. Take it off the earth of the horizontal bar and move it to the heaven of the vertical. So a simple instruction for that experience in meditation is to ask ourselves the question. Now, don't ask your head this question, ask your heart this question. Where do I begin? Where do I end, and where does God begin? Where do I end, and where does God begin? Just take that question into your heart and see what your heart tells you. We'll do that in the silence for a moment. Where do I end, and where does God begin? So noticing the feeling in our bodies as we have this contemplation, what are we feeling right now? I want to point out that we've considered and experienced the two bars of the cross, the horizontal bar of time and space, of limits and conditions, of thoughts and beliefs, and the vertical bar of non-dimensionality, unconditional love, divine mind. The cross is what Jesus reminds us of in the Lord's Prayer when he says, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven." Earth, heaven, same. The two bars of the cross suggest the unity of earth and heaven. But the trap is if we think of it as an abstract concept, as a symbol. And the secret of the cross, the way that we move from something merely intellectual, is found at the intersection of the two bars. So we don't just have two bars, but we also have the meeting place. We sang about in the song in the silence, the sacred meeting place of the horizontal and the vertical. So here's what I find to be the answer to my struggle with my humanity, is consider that there is only one place in all of existence, in all of the universe, in all of the cosmos, where these two bars, these two realms, these two aspects of God could meet. There's only one place where the cross is alive and not a mere thought or symbol, and that's in the human heart, right here, right now. God created the human being as a unity of earthly body and heavenly mind. Like God in whose image we are made, like Jesus the Christ, we are simultaneously flesh and spirit. We can both know this as an activity of conceptualization on the horizontal bar, and we can feel this as a conditionless experience on the vertical. Heaven and earth meet in our hearts all day, every day, and we are made. God made us to have access to this truth anytime we choose. And the great news is that we also made to have access to this truth not only merely anytime, but all the time. So the sign of the cross is a sign of humanity, and the sign of the cross is a sign of divinity. It is a sign of me. It is the sign of you. We often experience our lives, like I said, I often experience my life as a frustrating combination of joy and pain, of faith and doubt, of peace and rage, that show up as opposites that I don't seem to be able to resolve. And at the same time, the unity of the divine and the human dwells patiently and reliably in my heart, waiting for me simply to ask, to knock, so that I can receive. And here's the thing that I really notice, that when I sit in meditation, in quiet meditation, and I really become present with whatever is arising, the truth is that I am now in the experience of no experience, that when I am present with what's here, I cannot experience its opposite, which is absence. And only the human body is designed to offer this experience. Only the human body, in all of its finiteness, it's born, it dies. And yet this human body is able to convey us out of our bodies, out of ourselves, and into the condition of no condition. Isn't that amazing? God created us. God created us and imbued us with His divinity. And the Christian story is that God did this deliberately and went through an experience that is simply an evocation and a replication of the experience that we all go through as human beings. So let us take a last moment to go to the center of the cross by bringing our attention back to our hearts, and let us dwell in gratitude for the mystery beating there. Again, with help from Emmett Fox. I am divine spirit, the child of God, and in the presence of God I dwell forever. I thank God for this perfect harmony that I find where the bars of the cross meet in my heart. Let's take that inside for a moment in the silence. I am divine spirit, child of God. So in closing, I'd like to give Thomas Merton the last word. He writes in his book, The New Seeds of Contemplation, the mask that each man wears, this represents the horizontal bar, the mask that each man wears may well be a disguise not only for that man's inner self, but for God, the vertical bar, wandering as a pilgrim in exile in his own creation. And indeed, if Christ became man, it is because he wanted to be any man and every man. And if we believe in the incarnation of the Son of God, there should be no one on earth in whom we are not prepared to see in mystery the presence of Christ. So let us have a new appreciation for the sign of the cross. As a powerful symbol of our unique Christian message, it's not merely an X on a piece of paper, it's who we are. The cross represents the unity of the finite and the infinite. And we are gifted with bodies that uniquely in this cosmos can experience both heaven and earth at the same time. And so whenever I feel stuck, alone, frustrated, or fearful, I have only to move my focus to the center of my heart, where the bars of the cross meet, and ask to have my needs met and sit silently in the power and mystery of humanity. So, Divine Presence, we thank you that you offer us these insights into the truth of who we are. That while on the horizontal bar of the cross, I may not believe any of this, on the vertical bar of the cross, this is not only true, but where the two bars meet, in my body, in my flesh, and in my heart, I have access to the experience of the truth of this. And for this incredible, amazing, astonishing manifestation, we say, thank you, God. Amen.